I was forced into a marriage with a wealthy, heavily pregnant widow from the American elite, all for the price of $10,000 a month. I, Elijah, just a simple man trying to get by, accepted that absurd contract to save my family's future back home. I was ready to become a stand-in father and a husband for hire. But on our wedding night, I never could have imagined what she would do. In the end, I discovered that I, Elijah Hayes, was far more important than I ever believed. My body might have been stuck in Los Angeles, surrounded by this sterile, polished wealth, but my soul was still back in South Carolina, among the green, humid fields where I grew up. I'd been working out here for almost 2 months as a temporary staff member. My job was dual purpose, gardener and chauffeur at a house so luxurious it felt alien to my eyes and even my tongue. The estate belonged to Mrs. Serena Vance. It was a modern, minimalist mansion, all glass and marble, surrounded by a towering fence and security cameras everywhere. Outside, the Southern California heat felt scorching. Inside, there was only silence and the artificial chill of the air conditioning. My routine started at 5 in the morning. The first thing was touching the soil, the work I knew best. I cut the imported Kentucky bluegrass, watered exotic flowers I had never seen back home, and made sure every single leaf was clean of the dry, dusty air. I was the absolute master of that 100,000 square feet of garden. And the strange thing was, out there, among the dirt and plants, I felt at peace. The smell of moist earth and the scent of jasmine I cultivated myself were my only real memories of home. I was Elijah, the gardener, in a worn shirt and rough hands. But as the sun started to climb, I had to transform. Elijah, prepare the car. The dry, clipped voice coming through the intercom always hit me the same way. In that moment, I switched roles. I dropped the threadbare uniform and put on a crisp shirt, tailored slacks, and polished loafers. The hands that had just held a shovel now gripped a luxury steering wheel. I became the personal chauffeur to Mrs. Vance. Mrs. Vance, whom the rest of the staff simply referred to as Madame Vance, was the very definition of dignity. She was about 55, a wealthy widow whose husband had died 2 years prior. She moved with a practiced, trained elegance, always dressed in designer gowns and surrounded by an aura of untouchable distance. From the whispers in the kitchen, I knew she was highly respected in the elite circles of the city. Her image was impeccable, elegant, honorable, generous, and utterly above gossip. We hardly ever spoke. When she did, it was solely to give instructions for the next charity gala, or the boutique shopping center. Wait here, Elijah. Her eyes stayed fixed straight ahead, or on her phone screen. Inside the car, we were 2 separate worlds divided by a simple seat, and a gulf of social class impossible to measure. Lately, though, something had changed. The usual silence felt denser, and her gaze, often vacant, seemed to carry an unbearable weight. I started seeing her as more than just an elegant woman. She was elegant, yes, and extremely stressed. One morning, while pruning roses near the main living room window, I heard her voice. It wasn't loud, but it was strained and full of pressure. I froze, my shears midair. Serena was speaking fast, her voice punctuated by small sobs. "I don't know where he went," she said. "He's vanished. Sterling is going to destroy me over this." There was a long silence, followed by a choked gasp. "Yes, I know the risk, but it's not just about my reputation anymore. This has already happened. I'm pregnant." The shovel nearly slipped from my hand. Pregnant. Mrs. Vance, the rich, universally respected widow. The mystery enveloped me like the desert dust outside. Who was he? Who was Sterling? How could that sky-high reputation be about to collapse because of something so basic, so human? The silence she usually surrounded herself with now seemed like a fragile wall, ready to crumble at any second. I went back to work, pretending to be deaf. I knew that overhearing secrets in that house was as dangerous as petting a rattlesnake. That afternoon, just after I'd finished cleaning the car, the intercom buzzed again. This time, her voice was different, low, almost pleading. "Elijah, drop what you're doing. Come see me inside. Now." My heart started hammering against my chest. It was the first time she had ever asked me to enter without it being related to driving or a domestic chore. I peeled off my work gloves. I sensed that whatever she was about to tell me would change my life, for better or for worse. I crossed from the scorching terrace into the freezing air-conditioned parlor, walking toward a destiny I never could have imagined. I stopped on the threshold of the main living room, which, until then, I had only admired from afar. Glistening marble, Italian furniture, gilded calligraphy on the walls. I felt as out of place as my dusty boots on that polished floor. Serena was seated on a velvet sofa. She didn't have the posture of a queen, but the rigidity of a prisoner. She wasn't dressed in a gala gown, just expensive, simple loungewear. Without makeup, she looked fragile. The wrinkles around her eyes were mercilessly pronounced, and they were red from crying. "Sit down, Elijah," she said, her voice hoarse, pointing to an armchair across from her. I sat on the edge, stiff, my hands clasped together. We remained silent for a good while. Only the ticking of a large grandfather clock filled the room. "I know you might have overheard something this morning," she finally began, looking at me intensely. Not with judgment, but as if she were weighing me, deciding whether I was a threat or a way out. "Excuse me, Madam Vance." "I was just focused on the roses," I replied, trying to be honest while dodging trouble. Serena forced an ironic smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't pretend to be stupid. It changes nothing. You heard enough." She took a deep breath, gathering the remnants of her courage. "I'm pregnant." That confession came out as a painful whisper. "And that man left. He disappeared off the map, as if I were a nightmare he wanted to forget." I was speechless. I imagined the devastation of a woman as powerful as her. Her pregnancy wasn't just a private matter. It was a bomb about to detonate everything she had built. "I'm a widow," she continued. "My reputation, my late husband's good name, the charity foundation, my social circle, everything rests on this image of purity. If this gets out, people will point at me like I'm some promiscuous old woman. I'll lose everything, Elijah. Out here, reputation is the most valuable currency." She leaned forward. That gesture was imprinted on my memory forever. "I want to propose a deal." Her voice became firm, almost businesslike, as if we were discussing the price of some landscape plants. "Look, your current salary, compared to what I need, is pocket change. I need a father. I need someone I can introduce as a respectable justification, someone I can officially marry in front of everyone, so that when this baby is born, nobody dares to accuse me." "Madam," I tried to interrupt, completely thrown. "Are you referring to me?" "Yes, you. You're a working man, an outsider. You don't have dangerous connections, and above all, you desperately need the money. Listen closely, Elijah. You will marry me. We'll have a lavish wedding with important witnesses. Publicly, you will be my legitimate husband and the father of the child." Then she stated the figure that made my blood run cold. "I will pay you $10,000 a month." $10,000. That number floated in the air, enormous and real. With that money, I could pay off all my family's debts, build them a proper house, pay for my siblings' college tuition. It wasn't just money. It was freedom. In exchange, she went on, you will be my husband in public. In the house, we will remain Madame Vance and the employee. There will be no physical contact, no intimacy. It's a contract. You play your part. I pay you. You keep the secret about the baby's real father. And you and your family will never face hardship again. I lowered my gaze to my hands, to my dirt-filled fingernails. It felt like selling myself, selling my dignity as a man. I pulled out my wallet and saw the photo of my mother. I imagined my father's tears of joy when we finally paid everything off. I thought about the future I could give my people. There, my pride was worth the same as my worn-out shirt. Back in South Carolina, that money would be the dignity of my entire family. The internal struggle was brutal, like life and death battling inside me. After a silence that felt eternal, I lifted my head and looked at Serena's eyes, now filled with a terrifying hope. I accept, Madame Vance, I murmured. I will be your fake husband. She let out a long sigh, as if a great weight had been lifted from her chest. She instantly returned to the rigid Serena I knew, but a cold resolve shone in her eyes. Good. From now on, we are no longer just madam and employee. We are partners. Our performance begins tomorrow. Discretion is key. No one out there can know this is a sham. When I left the room, I knew I had just sold myself to a golden cage. Technically, I was rich, but I had also just signed the most complicated and painful contract of my life. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed in the staff quarters, thinking about those $10,000, the freedom, the luxury, my family. I picked up my old phone, the only bridge connecting me to home, and called my mother. My voice cracked, as she told me the house's roof had collapsed with the last storm, and that my sister had had to drop out of community college for lack of funds. Just be patient, Ma, I said, forcing myself to speak firmly. Elijah is going to send a lot of money very soon. Very soon. Hearing the weight they carried, all my ethical doubts shriveled. What did a small lie matter compared to the chance to change their lives? If being Serena's fake husband was the price to save my family, I would pay it. I would be the best actor who ever existed. The next morning, she called me back. This time, Serena was calm, professional. It was as if we were signing a sales contract, not preparing for a wedding. These are the rules, Elijah, she said, placing a thick sheet of paper on the marble table. You can read them, but you will not have a copy. This marriage is a performance. After the wedding night, we will not share a room. You will have access to everything you need. Clothes, car, credit card, to maintain your role, but you will not have access to me physically or emotionally. I nodded. Understood, madame. I mean, Serena. My tongue stumbled over pronouncing her first name without a title. Second, the identity of the real father is taboo. You cannot ask, investigate, or even theorize in front of me. When the child is born, your role as the fake father will end, and we will discuss a quiet divorce. But until then, your persona will be my main shield. Understood? Understood. I will protect this secret with my life, I replied. I wasn't exaggerating. She held my family's happiness in her hands. From that moment on, the wedding preparations advanced like a hurricane. They took me shopping on Rodeo Drive to the most expensive men's stores. A private tailor came to the house to take my measurements for impeccable tuxedos, suits, and formal wear that I, who had always only chosen work uniforms, could never have dreamed of owning. Suddenly, I had to choose gold watches and Italian leather shoes. Amidst so much luxury, I felt like an imposter. I looked in at myself in the huge mirrors and saw a tall, well-dressed man who looked rich and important. But as soon as I looked away, I still felt like the gardener with cracked hands. It was just a perfect mask. Serena became the director of our play. She taught me the codes of the rich world, how to speak in public, how to hold her hand in front of the cameras with just the right amount of affection, and, most importantly, the expression my eyes should carry. "Remember, Elijah," she repeated while we rehearsed in the dining room, "your gaze has to be convincing. Not the look of a fearful employee, but that of a devoted husband. You have to look proud of me." I tried to practice. I stared at her intensely. Our eyes met. Beneath the layer of ice she used to protect herself, I glimpsed her fragility. For a second, I didn't see the haughty Serena, but a woman alone, scared. The eve of the wedding, the house was buzzing. Guests were arriving from all over the country. I was in my new room, much larger and more luxurious. Alone, Serena called me on the house phone to review our story one last time. "Tomorrow is the big day, Elijah. Don't forget why we're doing this," she whispered. "For your honor and for my family's future," I answered surely. That night, the luxury around me felt freezing. I was, at the same time, the luckiest and the loneliest man in the world. I would have money, but I wouldn't have a wife. I would have wealth, but I'd lose a part of myself. My mind was split. My family back home would finally be safe. I here would be a puppet on stage. I could only hope the sham would go well. Tomorrow, Elijah the gardener would die, and Elijah the husband would be born. The day arrived, and I put on the most expensive clothes that had ever touched my skin. The impeccable tuxedo, the pocket square, perfectly placed, the luxury watch on my wrist, which was rough from holding tools. I looked at myself in the mirror of the room that already felt foreign. This Elijah was an illusion, a costly fiction. The event hall was dazzling. Hundreds of unfamiliar faces surrounded me, entrepreneurs, diplomats, members of influential families. Everyone had come to witness a seemingly sudden love story. There were curious whispers, some disguised suspicion, but everything changed when Serena appeared. She was radiant, wearing a custom-made white wedding gown, and she radiated the aura of a queen. She held a bouquet of roses and walked toward me. For an instant, before she put on her mask, I saw the vulnerable Serena from that night in the parlor again. Then her face hardened, and her smile became perfect, designed for the cameras. When she reached my side, she offered me a minimal, forced smile, directed at the flashes. Her hand brushed my arm, and I felt the coolness of the silk. That touch held no warmth. It was the contact of a contract, of a role. The ceremony was quick, in front of all those important guests. When it was time to say, "I do," I spoke firmly, though my heart screamed that this was the biggest lie I'd ever told. I wasn't just marrying her, I was marrying her honor, her social status. I was becoming the guardian of her biggest secret. At the reception, I had to act like a mesmerized husband. "Hold her hand, Elijah. softer, longer, I repeated internally. We walked among the guests, her clinging to me not out of affection, but out of necessity. I noticed how fragile her body was beneath the layers of fabric. She smiled, nodded, called people by their long, complicated American names that I never managed to remember. We were the perfect couple. To everyone. An older woman covered in jewels approached. "Congratulations, darling. You make a lovely couple," she said, narrowing her eyes with malice. "I didn't imagine Serena would find love again so soon. And you, young man, you must be a very special person." Serena replied with rehearsed sweetness, "Oh, Aunt Eleanor, Elijah has been an unexpected blessing. He has brought me happiness and stability." I had to complete the picture. I looked at her, forcing the expression of pride we had practiced 1,000 times. "Serena is an extraordinary woman," I said with a confident voice. "I'm truly fortunate to be by her side." My performance was so convincing that even I was surprised. When the party ended, I accompanied her to the car. I opened the door, and when I closed it, it was like dismantling the stage set. Inside, without an audience, the masks dropped. Serena leaned back in the seat, exhausted. The feigned happiness was wiped from her face, replaced by profound tiredness. "You did well, Elijah," she said without looking at me. It was her first compliment, though it sounded more like an evaluation than a congratulation. "Thank you, Serena," I replied, using the first name we had agreed upon for when we were alone. The drive back was silent. We had won the first battle. The world believed in our love, but I knew the truly difficult part hadn't even started. We arrived at the mansion past midnight. The same opulence as always now felt more oppressive. We had escaped the eyes of others, but we remained trapped in a house full of false promises. I turned off the engine and followed her without saying anything, like a shadow. We went up to the master suite, which, starting that day, would be our room. It was larger than my entire house back home, with a balcony overlooking the garden I myself tended. Serena stood in the middle, motionless. Her wedding dress looked like armor. She took off her tiara, left it on the vanity, and looked at herself in the mirror for a few seconds. I stood near the door, unsure of what to do. Offering help would be breaking the contract. "You can change your clothes, Elijah," she said without turning around. Her voice sounded flat, empty. All the emotion of the day had evaporated. I went to the bathroom and took off the tuxedo, changing into a much more comfortable t-shirt and linen pants. When I came out, she was wearing a long silk nightgown, but was still sitting on the sofa reading. She didn't look like a newlywed. She looked like a woman waiting for a late-night train. The awkwardness was palpable. "The bed is huge," she finally said, pointing to the king-size mattress. "But we have to maintain distance." She picked up a thin-mound throw pillow and placed it right in the middle of the bed, a small but symbolic barrier representing the chasm between us, a physical line for a boundary we had already signed. "Those are the rules, Elijah. I'm exhausted," she whispered, closing her eyes for a second. I nodded silently. I went to the side of the mattress closest to the window. Whoa. As I lay down, I looked at the high ceiling. It was the most comfortable mattress I had ever tried, but I felt as if I were sleeping on thorns. Next to me lay my wife, by law, a woman pregnant with another man's child, who was paying me a fortune to sleep beside her without touching her. We kept silent. I wanted to say something, ask her if she was okay, break the thick air around us, but I was afraid of overstepping the boundaries, of forgetting that I was just a paid actor. A few minutes passed, and Serena turned over, giving me her back. "Go to sleep, Elijah," she said softly. "Tomorrow you'll go back to being a chauffeur and a husband. This is business. Remember, we are just two strangers who share a bank account and an address. Those words, two strangers, hit me with the force of reality. All that luxury, all those promises for my family, were bought at the expense of intimacy, truth, and human warmth. I had money, but I had no connection. I was sharing a bed with my wife, and it felt like we were 1,000 miles apart. There were no caresses or whispers, just two tense bodies, separated by a pillow that felt like a fortress. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. I forced myself to think of my family. It's for them, Elijah. Remember why you are here. The night passed in absolute silence. From then on, I knew my life had been split in two. Elijah, the rich and respectable man in public, and Elijah, the lonely actor behind the door of that luxurious room. At dawn, when I opened my eyes, Serena was already on the balcony, looking out at the garden. She turned around with no trace of the shyness from the night before. Her mask was back in place. "Get up, Elijah," she ordered, with her usual voice. "I have a board meeting this morning. We need to be ready for today's role." After that night, our life returned to a kind of 0 point, but more absurd. We had a double routine. Behind closed doors, I was still the laborer. In front of the world, I was the husband. The day began with stealth. I got up slowly, not to wake her. I went to the staff bathroom and put on the gardener's uniform again, still impregnated with dirt and sweat. By 6 a.m., I was in the garden, with the hose in my hand, watering the perfect lawn. The caen net with the shovel, the pruners, the smell of damp earth, all that was my therapy. There, I could be myself, Elijah, the man who earned his living with honest effort. There was no need to pretend or force a smile. The irony was that now, while watering, I was a millionaire husband tending his own garden. The other employees, who were once my colleagues, looked at me with a mix of respect, confusion, and envy. They didn't know that I still collected a small weekly gardening wage as pocket money, while the vast bulk of those $10,000 was payment for an invisible performance. "Elijah, you don't have to do this anymore," Raoul, the senior butler, told me one day. "You're Madame Vance's husband now." I just smiled stiffly. I like to sweat, Raoul. I don't like being idle. By 10 a.m., the transformation began. I showered, put on the expensive clothes, and stood straight by the luxury car. The gardener went into hiding, and the husband emerged. "Prepare the car, Elijah. I have to see my late husband's attorney," she ordered. As soon as we crossed the mansion gate, everything changed. I opened the car door for her, supporting her until she sat elegantly, especially now that her belly was starting to show. Inside, I wasn't just a chauffeur. Sometimes I had to ask her, "How did you sleep, darling?" out loud, in case of listening ears. In exclusive venues, I always walked one step behind, but close enough to support her. I carried her shopping bags, smiled at her friends, and nodded at everything she said. I became an expert in the sham. I knew how to lean my body slightly toward her to look intimate. I knew how to place my hand low on her back when walking through a crowd, a completely false gesture of affection and possession. My gaze was well trained to radiate pride, as if Serena were a treasure I had found. But behind all those smiles was an emptiness. In the car, we barely spoke, except for instructions. Each of us took refuge in our silence. It was as if the masks were resting in the seats, waiting for the next scene. I was the chauffeur, she was the madam, two actors waiting for the next action. That contradiction tore at my soul. while secretly cleaning a mud stain from my expensive shoes in the restroom of a fancy restaurant, I remembered my hands covered in dirt at sunrise. I was the same man, but a contract forbade me from being him. Rich on paper, poor inside. In Serena, I saw another battle. Her role as the happy pregnant woman was a torment. The pressure to maintain her perfect image was so strong that she often looked pale, suffering from migraines and battling nausea. Her smiles became more forced each day, and several times in the middle of the night, I heard her quietly crying on the other side of the pillow that separated us. Observing her suffering, something began to shift inside me. She stopped being just the boss or the partner, and I started seeing her as a cornered woman. Amidst that silent double life, with fake roles and a distance that wouldn't yield, I began to wonder if those $10,000 a month were truly worth the loss of my identity. Was I really helping her, or just prolonging her torment? A few weeks passed, and our sham became almost flawless. I was Serena's ideal shadow, an attentive husband in public who never crossed the line in private. We functioned like a precise, efficient, theatrical machine. One afternoon, we attended a Glee for the Vance Family Foundation, a crucial event for her reputation. All the city's influential faces were there. She had to appear strong, happy, and untouchable. She wore an elegant evening gown, her belly now noticeably rounder, and despite her beauty, I could see cold sweat on her temples. The pressure was immense. I wore a custom suit. My hand rested low on her back. In that prearranged contact, we were chatting with a well-known financier when a socialite named Letitia approached, famous for her sharp tongue and cruel rumors. She smiled, but her eyes scanned Serena from head to toe. "Serena, you're absolutely glowing," she said with a tone that was too sweet. "Such a sudden marriage, eh? You always knew how to surprise us." And looking at me with feigned surprise, "I didn't realize you two knew each other from way back. That would explain how quickly you announced this good news." Her question was poison wrapped in sugar. It implied that I was a former lover who had now been given an official role to cover up the pregnancy. Serena's face tightened. Her smile faltered. "Of course, Letitia. She began, trying to follow the script. Before she could continue with the rehearsed lie, my instincts moved ahead of the text. I felt a visceral need to protect her. I was fed up with the dirty games of this elite that only thrived on gossip. I took a step forward. I squeezed in Serena's hand, which was trembling slightly. "Yes, we've known each other for quite a while," I said in a deep voice, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "But love doesn't look at the clock, Mrs. Letitia." When I saw Serena, I didn't just see the wealth that all of you see. I saw her kindness, the strength of her soul, and the desire to feel loved again after a great loss. When love calls, you don't make it wait. You welcome it. I looked at Serena, and for the first time, my gaze wasn't an act. I truly felt proud to be defending her. "We know what people talk about," I continued, turning back to Letitia. "But for us, the only important thing is our happiness. And as her husband, I promise to protect the honor of Serena and our child above my own life." Letitia was stunned. She hadn't expected this new husband to have the courage and eloquence to talk back like that. She ended up forcing a false smile and walked away defeated. When she had gone, Serena slowly withdrew her hand from mine. She didn't say anything at first. The room was filling again with murmurs and laughter. "Why did you say that?" she finally whispered, with a mixture of surprise and something more in her voice, perhaps admiration. "It was what they needed to hear," I replied, trying to revert to the actor role. "No, she denied, looking at me intently. It went beyond the script. Your words sounded real. You spoke of my kindness as if you truly saw it. There was confusion in her eyes. That night, something shifted between us. By defending her image, I was no longer just fulfilling a contract. I had acted on impulse to protect her, the woman. And in that gesture, without intending to, I had shown her the sincere gardener hiding beneath my buku suit. For the first time since the wedding, the tension between us softened. The closeness we showed publicly, unexpectedly, approached an emotional truth that neither of us had anticipated. After the incident with Letitia, the dynamic changed slightly. Serena became a little softer, less commanding. In the car, she sometimes broke the silence with small questions. How is your family back home? Or, do you like the Damascus roses you planted? Although the conversations were brief and awkward, I felt that she was starting to see me as a person, and not just as a living shield. However, the calm didn't last long. One afternoon, while I was organizing some shipping papers in the study, I heard a dull sound of breaking glass coming from the garden. I ran outside and found Serena by the pool, looking at the ground with an expression of shock. On the marble lay a rock, wrapped in a black cloth. Inside, there was a folded paper. What happened, Serena? I asked, approaching. I reached for the package, but she abruptly pulled my hand away. Don't touch it, she screamed, with a hysteria I had never seen in her. I backed up, startled. Serena took the paper with trembling hands and opened it. Her eyes scanned the lines. The more she read, the more the color drained from her face. Elijah, she whispered, looking at me with genuine terror. I never told anyone. No one. Only you and I know this. What does it say? I took another step forward. This time, I couldn't just stand by and watch. She crumpled the sheet tightly. Tears began to fall. It talks about the baby's father. It knows I'm pregnant. It knows you're not the father, and... She swallowed. It threatens to tell the press tomorrow morning if I don't confess my sin and pay a sum of money. I clenched my fists. It was an anonymous letter. Blackmail. I looked around. The high fence, the cameras. It didn't seem possible to throw it from outside. Did you see anyone? I asked. With this security, it must be someone very close to the house. Someone who knows our schedules and the system's blind spots. No one, she replied, gasping. It has to be someone from here. Someone who knows too much. Then she pointed the crumpled paper at me. Was it you? Did you break the contract? Do you want more money? The accusation cut through me. After everything I had done to defend her, she still saw me as an ambitious servant. Stop it, Serena, I said, raising my voice for the first time. I'm here because you pay me, yes. But if your secret is discovered, I lose too. I get kicked out, your world collapses, and my family's future collapses with it. If I wanted more money, I would have come straight to you, not sent an anonymous note. Her expression changed. She understood she had been unjust. The fear receded a little, making room for a wider panic. Then who? She murmured, dropping onto an outdoor sofa. Who knows all this? I picked up the black cloth from the ground. It was thick and familiar. I examined it. I recognized the type of fabric. It was like what was used by an exclusive catering company that serviced elite events, including ours. The gala the other day, I muttered. Someone from there. Someone who saw us, heard something, and dared to send this message directly to the house. I understood that the mystery of the baby's father wasn't just a story of a disappeared lover. It was a real threat against Serena's security and her finances. I, as her husband and protector, was in the middle of a dangerous conflict. Those $10,000 were no longer an actor's salary. They were the price of living as a target. "What are we going to do?" Serena asked, now completely disarmed. "We can't just stand still," I said. "We have to find out who is behind this before they act again." That night, for the first time, we didn't just share a bed. We shared fear and a common goal. We were no longer madam and employee, not even just partners. We were allies, bound by the same threat. And I knew that to protect this sham and my family's future, I would have to start investigating. I had to find the real father, that ghost who had returned as a danger. After the letter, the house became a silent battlefield. Serena wasn't sleeping, and neither was I. The message had destroyed her last mask of tranquility. From then on, she stopped caring so much about appearances. Only the fear remained. 2 days later, she fell ill. The pregnancy, the stress, and the terror of the blackmail brought her down with a high fever. The private doctor came, gave her a shot, and ordered absolute rest. I was the only one there, besides a nurse who came for a few hours. My role as a fake husband suddenly turned into that of a real husband. I entered the room. Serena was lying in bed, small and fragile under the incredibly expensive covers, pale, her hair damp with sweat. She no longer looked like the haughty Serena from the wedding, but like a 55-year-old sick woman. I sat on the edge of the bed, dampened a small washcloth, and started wiping her forehead. She opened her eyes for a moment and looked at me. There were no orders or shame, just exhaustion. "You don't have to do this, Elijah," she whispered. "You can call the nurse." "The nurse has hours." "I'm here," I replied softly. The room filled with a different kind of silence than usual. It wasn't the awkwardness of the contract, but the heavy calm of two exhausted people. It was a silence that invited the truth. After a while, Serena took a deep breath. "You must think I'm an idiot," she murmured. "Why would I think that?" I asked, stopping the cloth. "For getting into a relationship like that, for losing control, for risking everything, just so I wouldn't feel alone." She closed her eyes. I kept soaking the cloth. I wanted to understand why she had done it. "Since my husband died," she continued, "everyone sees me as a monument. The monument of wealth, the monument of purity. No one looks at me as a woman. No one sees the person who misses a genuine conversation or a simple touch." And then he appeared. "Fernando?" I guessed. She nodded weakly. He was younger, different. He made me feel alive. He didn't see me as Madame Serena Vance of the charity galas. He saw me as a normal woman. That was what I needed. I knew it was wrong, that it was crazy, but it happened. She paused, and then tears slipped down her temples. "And now, my regret is as big as the honor I've put at risk." I listened with a lump in my throat. I could see the real price of the perfection everyone admired. That woman who was paying $10,000 a month to hide a pregnancy was, deep down, a human being who had been looking for a little warmth. I put the cloth back in the bowl and spoke with the greatest honesty I could muster. "We all make mistakes, Serena. But you're not alone now. Not anymore." I didn't say it because of the contract. I said it because I sincerely wanted to help her. Compassion had replaced resentment. She opened her eyes and looked at me for a long time. In her pupils, I saw reflected a man who wasn't a servant, but a companion. "Thank you, Elijah," she whispered. "You're a good man." That night, we shared a different kind of intimacy. Not physical, but emotional. We talked about her fear of the blackmailer, her concern for the baby, the weight of being a wealthy widow. I told her about my simple dreams for my family back home. We still slept in the same bed with the pillow between us, but the physical distance no longer mattered so much. An invisible thread was joining us: understanding, confessions, and something close to trust. I understood that our contract had long stopped being a simple economic transaction. It was a complex alliance. I had to protect her, not just for the money, but because I had discovered the vulnerable woman hiding beneath the armor. And to do that, I had to find out who was behind the threats. This was no longer theater. It was becoming a mission. After that night of confessions, I knew I had to stop being just a gardener and a fake husband. Now I was a detective. The stakes were too high. If the blackmailer won, Serena's honor would fall, and with it, my family's future. Serena, though still weak, gave me access to a few things belonging to the man who had disappeared: screenshots of old, already deleted phone messages, and, most importantly, a seemingly normal business card. The messages were pure sweetness, promises of love, and secret dates. The card, on the other hand, was unsettling. It wasn't the card of just any lover, but of a financial advisor named Fernando Alvarez, with the address of an office tower where Serena's late husband's attorneys also worked. He said he had worked with my husband, she explained. He'd been out of the company for years, but he could help me with the foundation. An alarm went off in my head. The husband's financial advisor. He had been deep in her circle. He hadn't just disappeared. He had vanished under someone's order. Serena, you said he left without a trace. Did he really leave nothing? I asked. She frowned, thinking, until a memory struck her. Wait. Yes, days before he left, he was rushing. He left a small key. I thought it was for his gym locker. Where is that key? She looked for it in a secret compartment in the bathroom. There, hidden beneath expensive jewelry, was a silver key with a number and some engraved initials. The next day, I set out. I dressed in one of my most expensive suits. I would be Elijah the Rich, Serena's husband, running errands. I drove her to a social engagement to maintain the facade. When I saw her surrounded by people, I told her I had to pick up some documents. With my new phone, I looked up the initials on the key. I discovered they corresponded to the lockers of a private club that Fernando frequented. I drove there. I pretended to have lost my own key, and after bribing the tired attendant with a good wad of cash, I got him to let me check my number. That's how I got to Fernando's locker. When I opened it, my heart raced. Inside, there were no gym clothes or anything normal, just a USB drive, an old wallet, and a photo hidden behind the billfold. I took the photo with trembling hands. It showed Fernando and Serena smiling at a beachfront villa. That wasn't what took my breath away. It was the blurred figure in the background, a man whose face was familiar to me, Sterling. Sterling, the same name I had heard Serena pronounce in her distressed call, the late husband's eldest nephew, the one who managed the properties and was respected by everyone as a very conservative man. Suddenly, the pieces started fitting together sinisterly. Fernando, the lover, was the family's financial advisor. Sterling, the exemplary nephew, was present. This was not a simple story of a fleeing boyfriend. It was a plot. I carefully put the photo back in my pocket, returned the wallet, and hid the USB drive on me. I calmly closed the locker and returned to the car to order my thoughts. Fernando and Sterling were connected. What if Fernando hadn't left voluntarily? What if he had been threatened and forced out? And what if the blackmailer wasn't Fernando, but Sterling, trying to cover his own moves? I had to talk to Serena. The key was no longer for a locker. It was the key to the truth. Something on that memory stick was going to reveal a much darker twist than a simple love scandal. I returned to the mansion with my pulse pounding. I brought a secret heavier than Serena's pregnancy. The name of the disappeared man and a possible identity for the blackmailer. I found her in her small library, speaking on the phone with a tense expression. I waited for her to hang up. "Where have you been, Elijah?" she asked. I was starting to worry about the event today. I cut her off. "Fernando Alvarez didn't just vanish, Serena. He was forced out. And the one who's extorting you might not be him." Serena froze. "How do you know his name?" she said. "I never told you." I took the photo out of my pocket, the image of the two of them on the beach. "I found it in a private club locker he used," I explained. "But the most important thing is who appears behind." Serena looked at the photo. Her eyes were no longer surprised to see Fernando, but by the silhouette behind. "Sterling?" she whispered, almost voiceless. "Yes, Sterling," I continued coolly. "The blameless nephew who manages the properties, the devout man, the savior of the family reputation. I heard you when you spoke to him after the first threat, remember?" I took out the USB drive and plugged it into the laptop. I tried using Serena's birth date as the password. It worked. Folders opened with financial data from the foundation and several audio files. "Listen to this," I said, hitting play. The first voice was Sterling's, cold. "You need to leave, Fernando, now. If my aunt's scandal comes out because of you, the whole family will sink. I'll send you out of the country. You'll have money, but you disappear forever, or I'll make sure to destroy you first." Then Fernando sounded desperate. "I love her, Sterling, and she's pregnant with my child. I'm going to marry her." Sterling let out a sharp laugh. "Marry a rich widow? 30 years older? Don't be ridiculous. That child cannot be born with a stain on the name. You leave and let her clean up this mess alone." I paused the audio. The silence was heavier than any night. Serena's face changed from fear to a sad rage. Sterling forced him out," she murmured. "He told me he was doing it to protect me, to preserve the family reputation." She shook her head. "He didn't do it for me. He wants control of the inheritance and the foundation. He knew that if my image was tarnished, I would lose power, and he could take everything as the clean-cut relative." I showed her another file, an email Fernando had prepared, apologizing to Serena, warning her of the danger and the coercion. The real blackmailer wasn't Fernando, but Sterling, making sure she could never recover or return to him. Suddenly, a motor roared. A staff member rushed in. "Madame, Mr. Sterling has arrived. He's brought 2 attorneys." Serena's face paled. "He's coming to take control," she whispered. "He knows I'll try to resist." I disconnected the USB drive and pocketed it. Serena looked about to surrender. I moved closer. "Listen, Serena. Sterling cannot know we have this or that I'm your fake husband. We go back to the role. Be strong. We'll face him together." I positioned myself by her side, no longer as an employee or an actor, but as a protector. The library door burst open. Sterling entered with 2 men in dark suits and cold stares. "Aunt Serena," he greeted in a sickeningly sweet voice. "We've come to discuss the future of the Foundation. Given your delicate situation, we believe the best course of action is to—" "I'm not so delicate, Sterling," she cut him off firmly. I stepped a pace behind her, my hand on her shoulder in a gesture of support, this time authentic. Sterling shot me a look over her shoulder. "Mr. Hayes, I doubt you understand family matters," he said. "This is a complex topic. You should let the experts handle it." I held his gaze. I am her husband. What affects Serena affects me, and I know enough about the law to know that an inheritance is not snatched away with threats. Sterling let out a small laugh. Threats? I don't threaten anyone. I'm just trying to protect the family's good name. I know you're not the child's father, Elijah. I know about Fernando. I could ruin your reputation in one night. At the end of the day, you're still just a simple working man. You have no power against me. Serena spoke up. Her eyes sparkled. You're right about one thing, Sterling. I am a widow, I am pregnant, and I made a mistake. But you are wrong to believe I'm a fool. She approached her desk. I knew what she was going to do. Fernando didn't leave out of shame. You forced him out to take my late husband's position. You thought you would break me with fear. But even if some monuments cry, they don't crumble so easily. She pressed a hidden button, and on the large wall screen, the Foundation's map was replaced by the recording we had listened to. Sterling's voice filled the room, incriminating himself. His threats were exposed. This recording is already in the hands of my trusted attorney, Serena said. And this memory stick, she added, pointing to the USB in my hand, contains all the proof of your maneuvering. Sterling went white. His attorneys looked at each other, nervous. The battle was lost for him. It wasn't money that beat him, but the truth and the bravery of the woman he had so underestimated, and the intervention of the gardener he had dismissed. When Sterling and his attorneys left, with their heads bowed, the house fell into a new, clean silence. Serena sank onto a sofa and burst into tears, but this time it was pure relief. I sat beside her. We did it, Serena, I whispered. We did it, she repeated, looking at me with more than just gratitude. You saved me, Elijah. You saved my honor, my future, and this child's. Days later, the payment was processed. My account began receiving those $10,000 a month for a year, an incredible sum. A secret divorce agreement was drafted. The sham would end discreetly. I had completed my role. Serena called me to the garden, where I used to prune the roses. She handed me an envelope with legal documents, our prepared divorce, and another, the deed to a house bought for my family back in South Carolina, as an extra token of gratitude. I looked at the papers, all my dreams condensed onto a few sheets. I was free. I could go home. When do you plan to leave, Elijah? She asked. Her voice was serene, but her eyes betrayed an inevitable sadness. I looked at the flowers I had tended, the house that was initially a cage, but had slowly become a shared space. I looked at Serena, now about to become a single mother. I took a deep breath. I've fulfilled the contract, Serena, I said. I've been your husband under the law, and in public. I've collected the agreed-upon payment. I smiled faintly. But I can't leave yet. She frowned. What do you mean? The husband and wife sham needs to continue, at least until the baby is born and legally recognized. After all this, I'm not going to leave you alone to face the public, especially with Sterling still lurking around. I promised I would protect your honor and the child. That's no longer a matter of contract. It's a matter of my own dignity. Tears returned to her eyes, this time warm. I didn't know what would happen next. Maybe I would stay forever as a fake husband. Maybe not. But one thing was clear. I was no longer just the gardener behind the wall or the actor on the stage. I had found courage, and more importantly, an authentic bond with the woman beside me. A bond born of a lie, but nourished by the truth. I took her hand and squeezed it. A gesture without a contract. I'll stay, Serena, I said firmly, until we are both truly ready to close this chapter. We stood under the afternoon sun, two people united by a sham that had turned into reality. The Brillenrichen had ended, but another story was beginning. The story of two strangers who found purpose and hope in the midst of chaos. Several months passed since the confrontation with Sterling. Our life settled into a different kind of calm. The silence was no longer awkward, but understanding. I was still her husband to the world, but the acting was no longer a burden. We were a team, two allies waiting for the end of an act. Sterling didn't give up immediately. He kept watching us, looking for cracks, but every time he tried to approach the foundation, I was there, a firm perimeter with the USB drive as the card up my sleeve. Little by little, his threats dissolved into a distant murmur. Serena's pregnancy reached its final stage. I never imagined feeling so much tension for a baby that didn't share my blood. I, who initially only saw the money, now genuinely worried about her and the child's health. Serena began to open up more. She asked me to accompany her to doctor's appointments. She squeezed my hand when the nausea was too strong. We didn't become lovers, but our relationship transformed into a deep friendship and mutual respect, much more honest than the facade of the early months. One afternoon, sitting on the edge of the bed, caressing her belly, she looked at me with a tenderness I had never seen from her. "You know, Elijah," she said, "I used to be afraid that this baby would be born marked as a bastard. Now what I'm most afraid of is that you'll truly leave when he's born. I've already received my pay, Serena. I've already helped my family," I replied, trying to remain neutral. "This isn't about money anymore," she answered. Her eyes shone with a new sincerity. "You are the father to the world, and to me, you are the bravest man I have ever known. You gave me back my dignity." I didn't answer because, deep down, I wasn't clear either. The money was secure. I was free. But there was a thread holding me to that house. The night we most feared and anticipated arrived. At midnight, Serena began having strong contractions. I was the one who drove her to the hospital, speeding like a maniac, not like a chauffeur, but like a frantic husband. In the delivery room, she gripped my hand so hard she nearly broke it. She screamed. She cried it. I wiped the sweat from her forehead, whispering words of encouragement in my own mix of Southern English and in Spanish. The nurses and the doctor looked at us approvingly. They saw a devoted husband. Hours later, saw the cry of a baby filled the delivery room. A boy. When the nurse put him in my arms, I was overwhelmed by a wave of emotion. He wasn't my biological son, but on paper, he was small, red, perfect. I handed him to Serena. She hugged him on me, crying without restraint. "Welcome, my love," she whispered. "Look, Elijah, our son, at least in the eyes of the world." Weeks later, we had a small celebration. Guests showered the loving father with praise. That night, when everyone had left, we sat in the room. The baby was sleeping peacefully in a crib beside the bed. Serena handed me the divorce papers, ready and signed by her. "The time has come, Elijah," she said softly. "I'm safe now. This child is too. My reputation is firm. You can go back to your own people. They need you. As the real Elijah, you are, not as my fake husband." I took the pen. Everything was in order. Only my signature was missing. I looked at the child. Then I looked at Serena, who seemed calm, though her eyes still showed that loneliness I had come to know. I held the pen for several minutes. Finally, I placed it on the table. "I can't sign this, Serena," I said. She flinched. "Why? You don't have to worry about the money." "It's not the money. The contract was fulfilled, yes. But I can't abandon this child, who is legally my son. I can't leave you alone to face Sterling, or to face society. I can't let go of this role, Serena, because this role made me a better man. I smiled sincerely. I may have started as a fake husband, but I don't want to end up being a fake father. I took the divorce documents and slowly tore them up. The sound of the paper ripping felt liberating. I will stay as your husband. Maybe not in the way others imagine, but I will stay. I will continue to be this child's visible father. I will help him grow up. I will continue to be your Elijah in whatever role you need. Serena didn't answer. She just extended her hand. I took it. This time, the gesture was soft and full of promises. It was the handshake of two people who had gone through hell and yet chose to remain together in that strange paradise they had built. In the end, I found my freedom, not by running away from the sham, but by choosing to stay within it, transforming the invented role into a real responsibility. I, Elijah, the gardener, was starting a new life as a husband and father of a secret I was proud of. And for the first time, I felt neither like an actor nor a slave to the contract, but the owner of my own decision. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, two of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.